Marcus stops his automatic investment on a Tuesday in October. Not dramatically, not after a big fight with his bank, not after a market crash or a job loss, or any of the obvious reasons people tell themselves justify stopping. He just opens the app at 9:47 in the morning while he's waiting for his coffee to brew, navigates to scheduled transfers, taps pause. The whole thing takes 11 seconds. He tells himself it's temporary. He has $8,400 saved, 14 months of consistent $600 per month contributions. The account is up $340 from investment returns, his first real taste of money working for him instead of the other way around, and he pauses it. Because 14 months in, $8,400 feels like nothing, because the goal, the number he actually needs, feels so far away that the distance between here and there has become more discouraging than the starting line ever was. Because the initial excitement of beginning has completely worn off, and what's replaced it is something harder and quieter and much more difficult to push through: the grind. Marcus sits down with his coffee. He doesn't think of himself as someone who quit. He thinks of himself as someone who paused. He will not unpause for 19 months. This video is about that 11-second decision, about why it happens at a specific, predictable, almost universal moment in the wealth-building journey, about what it actually costs, and about the specific psychological tools that the people who push through use, not willpower, not discipline, not motivation, and because those run out, hey, something else entirely. My name is Sick, and I've spent a significant amount of time studying not just how people build wealth, but specifically where they stop. Because here's what I've found: the financial information available to Americans in 2026 is better than it has ever been in history. The tools are better, the access is better, the investment vehicles are better. The knowledge gap between people who build wealth and people who don't has never been smaller. And yet the gap in outcomes keeps widening, which means the problem is not information. The problem is the gap between knowing what to do and continuing to do it when it stops feeling good. That gap has a specific location, a specific moment, a specific psychological mechanic. And once you understand it, really understand it, you become almost immune to it. That's what this video is about. I have 3 things I want to give you today: the research on why the quitting moment happens when it does, the real cost of that 11-second decision in Marcus's kitchen, and the specific framework that the people who push through use, which is completely different from what most financial content tells you to use. Let's start with the moment itself. Marcus is not unusual. In fact, Marcus is statistically almost perfectly average in terms of when he stopped. Fidelity's 2024 retirement account analysis, covering over 45 million account holders, found that the highest dropout rate in consistent investing behavior occurs between months 9 and 18 of beginning a new savings habit. Not month 1, not month 3 when it's still exciting and new, months 9 through 18, right where Marcus is. And the reason this happens at this specific window, not earlier or later, is fascinating and completely understandable once you see it. Here's what the psychological journey of wealth building actually looks like. Months 1 through 3. The excitement phase. You've made a decision, you're taking action. Every contribution feels meaningful. Every dollar saved feels like progress. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is large, but it feels conquerable because the energy of beginning is carrying you. Behavioral economists call this the fresh start effect. A 2014 study by Hengchen Dai and colleagues published in Management Science found that people are significantly more likely to pursue goals following temporal landmarks: New Year's, birthdays, and the first of the month. The beginning of anything carries psychological momentum that has nothing to do with the goal itself. You're not motivated by compound interest in month 1. You're motivated by newness. Months 4 through 8, the normalization phase. The newness wears off. The habit is established, which sounds positive, but functionally means the dopamine hit of doing the new thing has normalized. Your investment account is growing, but slowly. The numbers aren't exciting yet. The behavior has become routine, necessary for long-term success, but psychologically unrewarding in the short term. This is the phase most people survive. Month 9 through 18, the Valley of Despair. This is Marcus's Tuesday. Here's why this specific window is the most psychologically difficult point in the entire wealth-building journey. By month 9, you have enough saved to feel like a real amount of money. $7,000, $8,000, $9,000. Genuinely meaningful in isolation. But you also have a clear enough picture of the goal to understand exactly how far you still have to go. And the math, which was abstract and theoretical at month 1, is now concrete and slightly brutal. If Marcus is saving $600 a month and his goal is $100,000, he has been at this for over a year and he's still less than 10% of the way there. The compound interest isn't large enough yet to meaningfully accelerate the timeline. The visible end of the journey is still more than a decade away. This creates what psychologists call the middle problem. A 2021 paper in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology by Mafarima Touré-Tillery and Ayele Fischbach found that motivation follows a U-shaped curve across long-term goals. It's highest at the beginning, where the fresh start effect operates. It recovers at the end, where proximity to the goal creates urgency. But in the middle? The middle is where motivation collapses. You're far enough from the beginning that the fresh start energy is gone. You're far enough from the end that the finish line urgency hasn't arrived. You are in the motivational no man's land. And here's what makes it specifically brutal for wealth builders versus other long-term goal pursuers. The feedback loop is almost invisible. Someone training for a marathon in the middle of their training program can feel their fitness improving. They run faster, they recover quicker. The effort generates physical feedback that the work is producing results. Someone building wealth in months 9 through 18 opens their investment account and sees $8,400. They know intellectually that compound interest is working. They know the math says this will become something significant, but they cannot feel it. The $8,400 doesn't feel different from $7,400. The progress is real, but it is invisible to the senses, and human beings are extraordinarily bad at sustaining effort toward rewards they cannot see or feel. This is not weakness, this is neurology. The brain's reward system, centered in the nucleus accumbens and driven by dopamine, responds to visible, proximate, concrete rewards. Distant, abstract, mathematically projected rewards generate almost no dopamine response. Your brain is not built for compound interest. It is built for immediate feedback. This is why Marcus pauses the transfer. Not because he's weak, not because he doesn't understand the math, not because he doesn't know what he's sacrificing, because his brain is doing exactly what brains do when the reward disappears from sight. It finds something else to do with the dopamine budget. Let me show you what Marcus's Tuesday actually cost him, not what it felt like it cost, which was nothing, because it was a temporary pause and he was going to unpause it soon. What it actually cost. Marcus pauses in October of year 2. His balance is $8,400. His monthly contribution was $600. He unpauses 19 months later, after life got in the way, after the temporary became habitual, after the pause became the new normal. During those 19 months, his account grew through market returns from $8,400 to approximately $9,800. The market worked even when he stopped. But here is the cost. 19 months at $600 per month is $11,400 that never went in. $11,400 that, had it been invested, would have started compounding immediately, would have generated returns in year 3, year 4, year 5, year 10, year 20, year 30. Let's run the actual math. $11,400 invested in a broad market index fund at an average 8% annual return held for 30 years becomes approximately $114,000. Marcus's 11-second Tuesday decision, his temporary pause, cost him $114,000 in future wealth, not $11,400, $114,000, because compound interest doesn't just grow the money you invest, It grows the time you give that money to work. And time, once lost, cannot be bought back at any price. But here's where it gets even more painful. The 19-month pause didn't just cost Marcus the contributions he didn't make. It cost him the habit. When Marcus unpauses at month 33, he doesn't start at $600 per month again. He starts at $200. Because 19 months of not investing reshaped his spending habits to absorb the $600, his lifestyle quietly expanded to fill the space the investment had occupied. And rebuilding the contribution takes another 8 months of gradual increases to get back to $600. The habit cost is invisible in the calculation, but it is enormous in reality. Let me introduce you to someone who didn't pause. Sarah doesn't exist as a specific person, but her math does. Same starting point as Marcus. Same month 9 crisis. Because the crisis is universal, it arrived for her too. Same motivational valley. Same Tuesday in October with the same feeling. She doesn't pause, not because she's stronger than Marcus, not because she has more willpower, because she has a specific system, which we'll get to in part 3, that makes the pause harder to execute than the continuation. Sarah's month 9 looks like this. She has $8,300 saved. She feels the same discouragement Marcus feels. The goal feels just as far away. The feedback loop is just as invisible, but the $600 moves automatically. The decision has already been made. The system is running, and Sarah does something small that Marcus doesn't. She opens a compound interest calculator. She types in her current balance, her monthly contribution, her expected return, her time horizon. She sees the number, not where she is, where she's going. The calculator shows $347,000 in 25 years if she continues. She closes the calculator, she makes her coffee. She doesn't feel motivated exactly, but she doesn't pause either. 30 years later, Sarah's portfolio is worth $430,000. Marcus's is worth $180,000. Same income, same starting point, same crisis moment. One 11-second decision, $250,000 difference. That is what the Tuesday costs. Here's the part of this video I want you to write down, because everything I'm about to tell you contradicts what most financial content says about pushing through the motivational valley. Most financial content says, stay motivated. Remember your why, visualize your goals, think about what the money will buy you, stay inspired. This is almost completely useless advice for the valley of despair. Because motivation, the feeling of wanting to do something, is precisely what the valley of despair removes. Telling someone in the motivational valley to stay motivated is like telling someone with a broken leg to just walk it off. The leg is the problem. The walking is what's broken. Here's what actually works. And it comes from the research on habit formation, behavioral economics, and specifically from a 2019 paper by Wendy Wood at the University of Southern California, probably the world's leading expert on habit formation. Wood's research makes a finding that completely reframes the wealth-building problem. Habits are not sustained by motivation, they are sustained by friction reduction. The behaviors we repeat are not the ones we feel most motivated toward. They are the ones that have the lowest friction, the fewest obstacles between us and the behavior. This is why people check social media constantly despite not particularly wanting to. Zero friction, phone in hand, app opens, and content arrives. The path of least resistance. This is why people don't invest despite wanting to. High friction. Log in, navigate, decide on amount, execute transfer, and second guess. Multiple decision points, multiple opportunities to not do it. The solution to the motivational valley is not more motivation, it is friction reduction. Specifically, 3 friction reduction strategies that work in the valley of despair. Strategy 1. Make stopping harder than continuing. This is the most counterintuitive and most powerful. Marcus's Tuesday was easy because the pause took 11 seconds. One tap. Done. The path of least resistance was stopping. Sarah's system made stopping difficult and continuing easy. Specifically, Sarah had set up her automatic transfer so that pausing it required a phone call to her broking during business hours, not an app tap, a phone call. During business hours, while she was at work, This is not an accident. She set it up this way deliberately. The friction of stopping was higher than the friction of continuing. She never paused, not because she wasn't tempted, because the temptation was never strong enough to justify a phone call during business hours. This is called a commitment device, a behavioral economics concept formalized by Richard Thaler and Shlomo Benazzi in their Save More Tomorrow program, which used automatic escalation and friction on stopping to increase retirement savings by an average of 13 percentage points among participants. The commitment device doesn't fight motivation, it sidesteps it entirely. Strategy 2. Change the feedback loop. Marcus's problem was invisible progress. He couldn't feel the compounding. The solution is not to wait until you can feel it. The solution is to create a visible proxy for the invisible progress, specifically a net worth tracker that you update monthly and graph visually. Not the investment account balance, the net worth, the complete picture. Here's why this matters. When Marcus looks at his investment account, he sees $8,400 and feels behind. When he looks at a net worth graph showing his progress from minus $4,000 18 months ago to plus $8,400 today, he sees a line going up. Same money, completely different psychological experience. The line going up produces a small dopamine response, not a large one, but enough. Research from the Brookings Institution on Financial Behavior found that people who track net worth visually, as a graph, not just a number, are 34% more likely to maintain consistent saving behavior over a 3-year period than people who track by balance alone. The visual feedback loop substitutes for the motivational fuel that compound interest hasn't yet grown large enough to provide naturally. Strategy 3. Find your anchor identity. This is the deepest strategy and the most durable. Marcus paused because he thought of himself as someone trying to save money. Someone trying to save money can have a bad month, can take a break, can pause. The behavior is external to the identity, something he does, not something he is. Sarah didn't pause because she thought of herself as someone who invests, not someone who is trying to invest, someone who invests. Present tense, core identity. This distinction sounds semantic. It is not. A 2012 paper by Christopher Bryan and colleagues at Stanford found that identity-based framing, being a voter versus voting, increased voter turnout by 13 percentage points. The same principle applies to financial behavior. When you frame saving as something you do, every difficult moment is a potential stopping point. When you frame investing as something you are, as part of your identity, the way being a parent or an athlete or a professional is, stopping requires not just pausing a transfer, but contradicting who you are. That is a much harder thing to do on a Tuesday morning while waiting for coffee. Marcus's system had no anchor identity. Sarah's did. She called herself an investor, not wealthy, not financially free, just an investor, someone who invests. That's who she was. When Tuesday in October arrived, pausing the transfer wasn't just a financial decision, it was an identity contradiction. She didn't do it. Let me be honest with you about something. Pushing through the motivational valley does not feel like the financial content you watch on YouTube. It does not feel like a breakthrough moment. It does not feel like victory. It does not feel inspiring or transformative or like the montage scene in a movie where everything comes together. It feels like a Tuesday in October where you don't tap pause. That's it. It feels like opening the app, seeing $8,400, feeling the discouragement, closing the app, and going to work anyway, knowing the $600 already moved. It feels like month 12 and month 13 and month 14 of doing the same thing with decreasing emotional reward and increasing mathematical compounding that you can't see yet. It feels like Sarah making coffee and not feeling motivated and not needing to feel motivated because the system is running and the identity is anchored and the friction of stopping is higher than the friction of continuing. Pushing through doesn't require you to feel like pushing through. It just requires the system to be stronger than the feeling. Here's what Marcus's life looks like 3 years after his Tuesday. He unpaused. He rebuilt to $600. He implemented all three strategies, the commitment device, the visual tracker, and the identity anchor. He started calling himself an investor. His balance at month 42 from the original start, accounting for the 19-month gap, is $31,000. It's not impressive by conventional financial standards, but here's what's happened to Marcus that a balance sheet doesn't capture. He has been through one market correction, a 14% drop over 6 weeks in early 2025. He watched it happen. He felt the discomfort. He did not sell. He did not pause, because investors don't sell during corrections. He got a raise at work, $8,400 additional per year. He increased his contribution by $400 per month before the raise touched his lifestyle. Because investors prioritize contributions, he has stopped checking his account daily, checks it monthly, first Sunday, coffee, kitchen table. Because investors don't need daily reassurance that the system is working, he is becoming, slowly and almost invisibly, someone different from the person who paused on a Tuesday in October. Not richer, not yet, not in ways that show on the outside, but different in the way that matters most. He has crossed the valley. And on the other side of the valley, for everyone who pushes through, the math starts doing something that the early months couldn't do. It starts becoming visible. Month 42, $31,000. Month 48, $38,000. Month 54, $46,000. Month 60, $55,000. The line on Marcus's graph is steepening, not because he changed anything, because compound interest, given enough uninterrupted time, always steepens. The valley was real. The discouragement was real. The Tuesday was real. And the other side is also real. It just required not tapping pause. Marcus opens his app on a Tuesday in October. Not the same Tuesday, 3 years later, same month, same day of the week. Almost the same time of morning, 9:52 instead of 9:47. His balance is $34,200. He looks at it for a moment. He thinks about the other Tuesday, the 11-second Tuesday, the Tuesday that cost him $114,000 in future wealth that he has been slowly, imperfectly, stubbornly clawing back. He doesn't feel triumphant. He doesn't feel like he won. He feels like someone who almost made a permanent decision based on a temporary feeling and didn't. He closes the app. He picks up his coffee. He goes to work. The $600 already moved. It moved 3 days ago automatically, the way it moves every month, and the way it will move next month and the month after, whether Marcus feels motivated or discouraged or somewhere in between. The system doesn't need him to feel anything. It just needs him to not tap pause. And this Tuesday, this October, this coffee, this kitchen, he doesn't. If this video found you on your Tuesday at month 9 or month 11 or month 14 of building something that doesn't feel like it's working yet, I want you to know something. The valley is not a sign that you're doing it wrong. The valley is the price of admission to the other side. The discouragement is not a warning that you should stop. It is proof that you've been going long enough for it to get hard. And hard is exactly where most people tap pause. Don't tap pause. Hit subscribe. If this gave you something to hold on to, I'll see you in the next one.